You missed it. You totally missed it, and I'm not doing it again. So there we go. Good day, good day, good day. Oh, happy day. It's a good day. You know, it's always a good day for me when the sun is shining. When the sun is shining, I feel good. Tell me something good. Tell me that you love me, yeah. Y'all know I'm not a singer. Oh, happy day. Yeah. I'm just going to sit here singing until y'all join me. You hear the dog in the background. You hear the boy in the background. He's on lunch break. I'm on lunch break. The pup is on lunch break. We are all lunch breaking. Oh, he's got to be quiet though. He's loud. Everybody, come on in. So I was talking to my niece yesterday. I told her I wasn't going to, hi, darling. Good morning, darling. I told my niece I was not going to talk about her today, but now I am. I told her that it depended on what I felt like, what I felt like when I got up in the morning. But so we were talking yesterday, and then it's so funny because she gets off the phone with me and she sends me a text message and says, if you talk about me on Tea Time, don't make me sound crazy. And I had to call her back like, wait, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Good morning, Susanna. What are you talking about? And she's like, Auntie, I'm just saying, if you want to talk about this subject on Tea Time, that's fine, but I need you to get the full context of our conversation. My first thought is, look, everything we talk about is not going to be something we talk about. Feel free to talk to me. Feel free to talk to me. I got people hiding from me now, because she got Tea Time now. No, I don't want to talk to her. My business will be all in the street. She'll be making me sound crazy on Tea Time. But I don't talk about all of your business. So what we were talking about, as I now talk about her business, because she did give me permission to have this discussion. So what we were talking about yesterday is privilege, right? Are you privileged? Darlene, Susanna, are you privileged? Do you feel privileged? Susanna, I don't know what your race or ethnicity is. So this question is I'm not sure if it applies to you or not. I mean, you can still answer the question, but it was really directed towards African Americans who are speaking to privilege. Are you privileged? Darlene, do you feel like you had privilege? And could you speak to your privilege if you were asked to on a panel for diversity and inclusion? Would you be free to speak to your upbringing well, wait, Susanna, you said of course. Why of course? Listen, child, I don't know what your ethnicity is. You could be light-skinned, you could be Latinx, you could be whatever. I don't know what it is. Now, if you are white American or white, yes, obviously you're privileged. But if you're not, the question is, do you feel privileged, right? I mean, for white Americans, I don't care if you feel it or not, you are privileged. But for others, you may or may not feel privileged. And if you do feel privileged, is that the kind of privilege that you have a conversation with others about when you're talking about diversity and inclusion? So in my Swiss Italian, okay, thank you. Okay, so not white American, but still considered Caucasian. In my opinion, if I have certain benefits, right? And in the context of other African Americans, somebody might say, oh, well, Kai, you're privileged, right? Somebody might say that. But in the context of society as a whole, I am not privileged. So we have to be careful. I was talking to her about it. You have to be careful about how you frame things, because you have to think about what is the goal here. So my niece grew up in a predominantly African-American community, African-American city, dang it. She was in Alabama in the South, predominantly African-American. So she did not grow up being looked down on because of, right? Because everybody looked at her, looked like her. You know, different shades, but everybody looked like her. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't discrimination, there wasn't prejudice, there wasn't racism, there wasn't all of that. There was. But she had the privilege of having parents who protected her from that, right? So is that privilege in the context of society now, in the context of diversity and inclusion? Is that privilege? Is that privilege that we are speaking to? She had the privilege of going to a school that had African-American teachers, mostly probably 99% African-American students. She was not an outcast. She was just one of everybody else. And there is a privilege to that. There is a privilege to growing up around people who look like you, talk like you, act like you, are raised in the same type of socioeconomic background as you. There's a privilege to having parents too. There's a privilege to living in a small community where everybody knows everybody, where the police officer who pulls you over knows your stepdad, so therefore he's not going to give you a ticket. Man, go home, but tell Howard I say hi. You know, man, you know, look, let me call your mama if you're acting up in the streets. There's a privilege to being in that small, tight-knit community, right? But is that the same type of privilege that we're talking about in the context of race relations now? That's not the privilege we're talking about. At least it's not the privilege I'm talking about. Because although in her bubble, and she recognizes she lived in a bubble, in her bubble, she may have been privileged in comparison to some of the other kids who look just like her. But the moment she stepped out of that bubble, there's no privilege. Nobody cares you was raised in Tuskegee, Alabama. Who cares? Most people don't even know where Tuskegee, Alabama is. I mean, you know, you say Tuskegee, Alabama, they still don't get it. Where's that? I cautioned her to be careful about how she presents her privilege in a multi-ethnic environment. There are too many whites who don't recognize their own privilege, maybe because they're not rich, maybe because they're not where they wanted to be economically, or not even about being rich, but maybe they don't have the job that they really wanted. They didn't get the education that they wanted. They didn't, succeed in life the way that others have. So they don't understand that regardless of the fact that you didn't succeed, you had the opportunity that others may not have had. Growing up in Switzerland, being half Italian, I was looked at as less than, okay, they used to call us bad names because we were not pure Swiss. Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea. No idea. That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, but look, this is what we deal with here, right? It's so funny because I have friends who would consider anybody that's not black white, which sounds crazy. I know it's crazy. You know it's crazy because everybody that's not black is not white. Hold on one second. I got to let the dog out. Hold on. Okay. We're housebreaking him. We can't make the puppy wait. And the other boy is preoccupied at this moment. So the interesting thing, so you have people who consider anybody. So if you have a Latinx person, an Asian person, there are people I know who would call those people white. I'm like that, but wait, she's not white. She's Mexican. She's not white. She's, from Spain. She's not white. He's not white. He's Asian. Well, they're not black. You and I and everybody has heard that, well, they're not black. Yeah, maybe not, but that doesn't make them white. So the natural assumption is everybody who is considered a Caucasian is equally treated. So I'm glad that you shared that, Susanna, because that just shows that just because you got white skin or white, right? Because you got a little color to you, Susanna. But just because you have white skin doesn't mean you're treated doesn't mean that you are automatically given privilege. Now, in the U.S., I'm going to assume you would be automatically given privilege. But if you weren't raised here, you understand struggle and you understand discrimination just like I would understand discrimination, right? But the point is, if your parents raised you in a way so as to protect you from everything else that was going on in the world, does that mean you were privileged? Yeah. Yeah, you were privileged to have some really smart parents. You were privileged to have people who protected you, who had people who valued you as a person and put you in environments where you as a person was recognized as valuable, rather than put you in situations where you were looked down upon, right? Good morning, Suli. You getting tested? Is it for work? Don't tell me you're sick, Suli. We don't want to hear that. I mean, tell me if you are, but I don't want to hear it. But I will hear it, but I don't want to hear it. It's hard to have some conversations because as much as I am proud of the upbringing that I had, as much as, it offends me when people automatically assume that I'm from the bad area of town or that I'm from, oh, you're from St. Louis, so you must be from East St. Louis, because the stereotypes. Okay, great, Suli, great, good. Because there's stereotypes about particular areas of St. Louis. And so if you see me as a Black person from St. Louis and you say, oh, you must be from East St. Louis, well, you're saying I must be from the ghetto, right? I must be from impoverished area, which I get offended by. But as much as I was privileged, oh, good. Way to be proactive, Suli, thank you. As much as I was privileged to have been exposed to all kinds of situations, I was privileged to have traveled a lot when I was younger. A lot of things that my counterparts, my African-American counterparts were not doing, I was doing. I was privileged to have other cultures around me. I was privileged to be exposed to multiple cultures. I was privileged to be taught an appreciation for other, an appreciation for myself, an appreciation for Black history. And my niece was saying one of the privileges that she had in growing up in Tuskegee, Alabama, was that they teach Black history. And she said something yesterday that I didn't even know. Like, see, I didn't get taught that in school. I went to an all-white school, predominantly white school. She says Sundays were not closed because of church. Originally in the South, Sundays were not closed. Stores and things were not closed on Sunday because of church. They were closed on Sunday because that was the slave auction day. I'm like, what? All this time we thinking it's because folks want to go to church. No, they don't want to go to church. They want to go buy some other folks. She was privileged to have been raised in this community. But when she goes and sits with her white company on a panel for diversity and inclusion, is that the privilege she should talk about? What do you think? What do you think? Is that the privilege? Should she consider herself privileged? Remember, in a conversation with other predominantly whites, is that the privilege she should talk about? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, no. In my opinion, it would, and I shared it with her that she would be better served not using the word privilege, because it's very hard for some people. Right, Steve, right. The youngins educating us. I was like, oh, really? Ooh, okay, I didn't know. It's very hard for some people to recognize their privilege over others and to see that there's a distinct difference in how and what my privilege looks like and what your privilege looks like. So we get into this big conversation about how she had never had to deal with discrimination, racism, blah, 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 right? And I was like, right, you never had to deal with it because you didn't have social media. You didn't see it. Your mother knew what areas not to take you to. Your parents knew where not to have you, and you knew where not to go. Is that privilege? Privilege is being able to get in your car and drive cross country and not have to worry about where you're going to stop, or if you can stop in this area, will it be safe for you here or there? That's privilege. Privilege is my friend who is in California, my white friend, tea timer, Jana, comes to the table all the time. She hops in her car, decides she's going to take a road trip to Texas, drives across country. She drives wherever the hell she wants to drive. There's no concern for, is this place safe for me to stop? There's only concern for how much is it going to cost for gas and lodging. Me, on the other hand, I'm getting in the car to drive up to Michigan. I'm having anxiety attacks all along a week or two prior to going. I am anxious because I have never driven on the East Coast this far. I don't know where it's going to be safe for me. I don't know, what's a good spot. And I have to do the research of, can Black people stop here? What's the population here? What's the political climate in this area? That's privilege. Her privilege. Now, I might have the privilege of being able to drive, and maybe my counterpart doesn't have the money to take that trip to Michigan just to go buy a damn puppy. Maybe somebody might look at me and say, okay, you bougie. You drove all the way to Michigan to get a puppy. Yeah, somebody might say that. But in the context of diversity and inclusion, no. For a predominantly white-owned company and white-populated company, no, I'm not privileged. I had benefits. I was fortunate. I was fortunate to be raised by the people I was raised by who protected me. I was fortunate to know where to go and where not to go. I was fortunate to be raised around people who looked like me, and therefore I felt supported throughout my childhood. I didn't have teachers who automatically thought I was going to be a failure because of the color of my skin. That was fortunate for me. I didn't have privilege. I was fortunate. And so I was talking to my niece about making sure that she has a responsibility. You can feel privileged if you want to. Suli, Susanna, Steve, Darlene, you can feel privileged, and I can feel privileged. Absolutely, I can. In the Black community, we would be called uppity, okay? You would be called uppity because you feel like you're privileged, right? And we all had privileges. I had the privilege of growing up in a very good community. Parents who wanted to make sure that I was not in the bad part of town, that I was in a safe area. I was a part of a desegregation program to go to high school, middle school and high school. That was a privilege. It was a privilege that I was able to be a part of a desegregation program, right? There's a lot of my counterparts who went to the city schools. Their education wasn't as good as my education. But when I'm talking to a mixed crowd and I'm wanting them to help understand what the differences really are, I can't speak to that as privilege because my privilege is not really privilege. My privilege is born out of suffrage. So my parents knew what part of the town not to let me go to. I knew where not to go. That's not privilege. That's survival, okay? But it's not the same. Me never have to worry when I see police versus you having more money than someone else. You never have to worry when I see police versus you have. You're right. It's not the same. Exactly. It's not the same. So we have to be careful how we use that word when we're talking to people in a company who's wanting to improve their relations, their internal relations, who's wanting to make sure that they address diversity and inclusion. And we don't need just things to be just talking points. We don't need you to have a diversity and inclusion division or department or initiative and then walk around saying everybody has privilege. Well, obviously your division is not doing their part because everybody does not have privilege. Being raised Catholic, I wonder why we ate fish on Friday. We all thought there was a scripture-based rationale for doing so. Fishing was a major industry in Vatican City. Everyone made bank, including McDonald's and those fish sandwiches. In some countries, your gender was a privilege. Being a female or a male? So privilege can be based on gender, based on race, based on socioeconomic status. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Suli, we got 2 strikes against us. We have 2 strikes against us, right? So privilege is based on several things. Hold on, guys. Hey, Chan, come get your pop. He looking at me like, Mama, you see me? You see me at this door? Cut all that talking out and come get me. I want to make sure that we use our platform the right way. So if you're given a platform to have this discussion, to help guide initiatives, to help people understand the policies and procedures that they need to have in place in order to respect everyone, the diverse group of people that they have working for them, we don't need you coming to the table talking about how privileged you were, when in actuality, you were just taught survival skills. You have tremendous survival skills. And my niece recognizes that, just so we know. Auntie did not put you on blast, Jasmine. We know that you recognize that. And she does understand. But sometimes we're so proud. We're so proud of our upbringing. We're so proud of what we've accomplished, what our parents accomplished, that we want to speak to that. But we got to remember, what's the purpose? What is the purpose? Now, I'm not saying go in there and boo-hoo and cry and make up some lies about how you suffered as a child. No, I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying that amongst your friends you should act like you were destitute when you weren't destitute. I'm not saying that. You said, why are you and Sully worried about 2 strikes? Y'all got bats. I mean, but we still got to be prepared, Steve. Make sure when you're having your conversations about anything, this is about privilege, this is about how you're framing what you're talking about. Make sure that you recognize who your audience is and what the purpose is. The purpose is what you're speaking to. So pull from your experiences, pull from your life changes, whatever. Pull from that to address the purpose. Are you privileged? I'm not privileged, but I'm privileged. Give me the different context. Am I privileged amongst plenty of people who have no job right now? Yeah, absolutely. But was it privilege or was it hard work, perseverance, persistence? Was it privilege, hard work, perseverance, persistence, survival skills? That's not privilege. That's work. Work. That's what that is. See, when you have privilege, you don't have to do all the work that we have to do. You don't have to worry the way we worry. So that's not privilege. That's I don't know what else to call it other than survival. Good morning, Mickey Neal. Good morning. Do you know it's so interesting? I have a girlfriend named Nikki Neal. Oh no, it's not Nikki. Never mind. Her name is Nakia Neal. Anyway, sorry. Look, your name reminded me of her part, probably because of the Neal part. You have to be careful about what you're talking about and who you're talking about it with whom you are talking about certain things. And make sure that when you're talking about certain things that you are framing it the right way so that your message is well received and so that people are able to pull from it and learn what they need to learn. What was the purpose of the conversation? And my niece got it. She was working through it. So her being able to work through, her having the conversation with me was helping her to work through how she could speak to privilege from her perspective. And I said, you had benefits, you had perseverance, and you were fortunate. But let's be careful about how we throw that word privilege around when we're trying to get other folks to understand their privilege. Because, you can sit at the wrong table and people are like, well, see, look, you got privilege just like me. I didn't even grow up in a middle-class family. I worked really hard. Yeah, but that's not the same thing, right? It's not the same thing. Anyway, guys, so are you privileged? Do you feel privileged? You can and cannot feel privileged. You can be and also not be privileged at the same time. Amongst your peers, maybe you feel privileged. Amongst everybody else, maybe not. You stacked against the white folks? No, maybe not. And if you're a white person going into an all-black community, maybe you won't feel privileged there. You still do have privilege, but you may not feel it in that other community, right? Susanna, you have privilege here that you didn't have in Switzerland, right? Context is important. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you today. I feel good today. Privileged or not, I feel good. I do feel privileged to have a job. I feel privileged to be up and moving around. I feel privileged to have energy. I feel privileged to have food. And you know what, y'all? I just bought a brand new trash can. I feel privileged to have a brand new trash can. But when we sit down and talk about diversity and inclusion, we won't be talking about my privileges, right? Anyway, have a wonderful, 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 wonderful day. I wish you all well today. Suli, I hope that your results come back negative. I'm sure they will. That's what we're gonna call to the COVID gods and tell them now let there be negative. And I'm gonna get back to work. I'm gonna get back to tending to this puppy, tending to this boy, and tending to my job. I have a little bit more time before my lunch is over. I really like this lunchtime meeting because we have our 30-minute little quick discussion, and then I get to have my lunch, and then I get back to work. So this is really working for me. And I know we have some people that we missed during this time, but I really appreciate those of you who keep sticking with me, keep coming to this table, keep getting filled up, and keep filling up my cup. I will see you guys here tomorrow. Have a wonderful, glorious day. Wash your hands, wear your mask, wash the foot, son, and keep your distance.
And don't eat cheese.
Okay, don't eat cheese. And tomorrow we're celebrating a birthday because the boy will be 13 tomorrow. Woo woo! Have a great day, guys. See you tomorrow.